This isn't just a ruined Christmas story. It's when I realized my parents used my grief, shatter my trust, and even tried to push my son out of the family while using my money. What I walked into that night was a betrayal so deep it tore my life apart. But in the wreckage, I found the opening I needed to break free. I never imagined myself a widow at 34. Yet here I am, Dakota, at my kitchen table before dawn, wrestling 7-year-old Tommy into school clothes, still battling a wellspring of tears. Months have blurred since that horrific construction site accident tore Mark, my beloved husband, from our lives, but some days the raw wound feels as fresh as yesterday. The initial aftermath was a disorienting haze of legal documents, inconsolable grief, and endless sleepless nights. Honestly, I don't know how I would have navigated it without Sarah and Jim, my extraordinary in-laws. They became our unwavering anchors, true angels, collecting Tommy from school daily so I could desperately cling to my job. Each time I'd retrieve him, they'd subtly try to press money into my hand. Sarah, truly, I can't accept this, I insisted just last week, gently deflecting the envelope she tried to tuck into my purse. Dakota, sweetie, we simply want to help, she'd countered, her gentle eyes meeting mine, brimming with genuine concern. We understand the insurance payout was substantial, but you are our family. Please, let us do this. She was right. The $300,000 from Mark's life insurance, combined with my role as a marketing manager, kept us financially stable. But with Sarah and Jim, it was never about the money. It was the profound, unconditional love they poured into our lives every single day. If only my own parents offered even a fraction of that support. My parents, you see, always positioned my older sister, Rachel, as their golden child. Now, they've extended that same exhausting favoritism to her children, effectively rendering Tommy invisible. Last weekend offered a perfect, painful illustration. Tommy, brimming with innocent excitement, was thrilled to visit his grandparents. Yet, within 20 minutes, Mom was already sighing impatiently at his natural curiosity. "Why does the clock make that sound?" Tommy asked, his finger tracing the ornate, antique grandfather clock. "How does it work inside?" Mom's exasperated sigh was audible, her eyes rolling. "Dakota, can't you manage him? He perpetually questions everything. Rachel's children never cause us this much bother." Dad, predictably, nodded in agreement, already reaching for his laptop. "Here, Tommy, why not play some games instead? Look, I've downloaded new ones." But Tommy didn't crave screens. He yearned for conversation, for knowledge, for a genuine connection. All the while, Rachel's 3 children were huddled in a corner, mesmerized by their phones, barely acknowledging anyone's existence. And my parents? They presented this detached behavior as the epitome of ideal upbringing. I'd long ago perfected the art of biting my tongue. As the perpetually less favored child, these painful comparisons were a familiar ache. Now, I simply shake my head and remain silent as they laud Rachel's parenting, implicitly condemning mine. Still, I clung to the hope they offered occasional respite with Tommy, watching him during my late meetings or stepping in when Sarah and Jim were truly swamped. Or so I naively believed. It was just another Tuesday dinner at my parents' home. Yet, the subtle warning signs pricked me the moment I stepped inside. Mom had prepared my favorite lasagna, a dish reserved almost exclusively for occasions when she desired something from me. Dad, usually reserved, was uncharacteristically effusive, probing about my job, about Tommy, about everything. They were meticulously building up to something. I just couldn't fathom what. "So, Dakota," Mom began, her knife meticulously portioning her lasagna into perfect squares, "we've been meaning to ask you something. How much was Mark's life insurance payout?" The question struck me like a physical blow. I nearly choked on my water, utterly blindsided by such a direct, invasive probe into my deepest grief. Perhaps it was the sheer shock, or maybe I was simply exhausted from guarding this painful secret from my own parents. But the truth spilled out. $300,000. I heard myself say, my voice barely a whisper. The fork in Mom's hand clattered against her plate. Dad's head snapped up with such abruptness. I feared he might injure himself. They both fixed me with a gaze usually reserved for lottery winners. Well, Mom declared, deliberately setting down her fork. What are your plans for all that money? I could feel the suffocating weight of their unspoken expectations pressing down on me. I've invested it, I explained, fighting to maintain a steady voice. It's for Tommy's future, his college education. Perhaps a down payment on an apartment when he's older. Mark and I always discussed it. But that's years away. Dad interjected, waving a dismissive hand. You should be considering the present, Dakota. Yourself and your family. The emphasis on family chilled me to the bone, making it abundantly clear he wasn't referring to Tommy. I recognized that tone. It was the same one used when they'd helped Rachel with her house deposit or funded her extravagant wedding. You could achieve so much with that money right now. Mom chimed in, leaning forward with an almost predatory eagerness. You could genuinely help your family. People who need it today, not squirrel it away for some distant future that might never. I'm not discussing my money anymore. I cut her off, my voice sharper than intended. The ensuing silence was absolute, deafening. They both recoiled, Dad's face clouding with that familiar disappointment I'd witnessed countless times in my childhood. Mom's lips pressed into that thin, ominous line that always heralded trouble. The remainder of the dinner dissolved into a tense, strained silence, punctuated only by the scraping of silverware. I truly believed that was the end of it. Knowing my parents, I braced myself for the customary month-long silent treatment, their favored punishment when I failed to align with their expectations. To my utter surprise, Mom called barely a week later. We're hosting a family dinner on Sunday, she announced, her voice saccharine, as if our previous encounter had been nothing but pleasant. Rachel and her children will be there, too. You absolutely must come, sweetie. Her tone instilled a deep unease within me, but I reluctantly agreed. Arriving that Sunday, I found Rachel and her kids already engrossed, as usual, in their phones. As we settled to eat, Rachel began her familiar lament about escalating living costs, mounting bills, and the perpetual struggle to make ends meet. Everything is just prohibitively expensive now, she sighed dramatically, passing the potatoes. Father and I barely manage to sustain a normal life anymore. While Mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, echoing concerns about soaring grocery prices and utility bills, Rachel straightened in her seat, clearing her throat with a performative flourish. I've been contemplating, she declared, sweeping her gaze across the table with that same self-righteous air she'd perfected since childhood. Dakota and I should help Mom and Dad financially. I'll contribute $500 every month. I wish I could offer more, but you know how it is. Jack's the sole earner, and with the kids, she trailed off, letting the implied burden hang in the air before turning to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her calculating eyes. But you, Dakota, you truly ought to send them $1,000 monthly. Excuse me. I nearly choked on my water, genuinely incredulous. Well, it's logical. Rachel pressed on, unfazed. Your job pays exceptionally well, and you only have one child to support. Plus, given your situation, you have this other income now. My blood began to boil at her insidious avoidance of explicitly mentioning Mark's death. I yearned to scream that I was a widow, that a husband's income was no longer a luxury I possessed, that the other income she so casually referenced was the sacred cornerstone of my son's future. But Mom was already clapping her hands with delight, and Dad beamed as if it were Christmas morning. "Oh, girls," Mom exclaimed, "you have no idea what this means to us." I sat there, paralyzed between scorching anger and utter disbelief, trapped by my family's expectant faces. The words of refusal congealed in my throat. My entire life had been a quest for their elusive approval, and here they were, overtly assigning a price tag to it. Fine, I heard my own voice say, I'll do it. The very first transfer was the most agonizing. $1,000 vanished with a few cold clicks. I rationalized it, telling myself it was a necessary sacrifice for increased family support with Tommy. But that fragile fantasy quickly shattered. "Mom, Could you possibly pick Tommy up for school today? Sarah has a doctor's appointment, and I'm stuck in a late meeting. Oh, honey, I'm so dreadfully sorry. Mom's voice crackled through the phone. I've got such a pounding headache today. You know how my migraines debilitate me. This became an insidious pattern. Every single time I desperately needed help with Tommy, an elaborate excuse materialized. Mom was too busy, too exhausted, had pressing errands, or her back was suddenly acting up. All the while, the $1,000 departed my account like clockwork each month. One particularly infuriating Thursday, after Mom declared she couldn't watch Tommy because she might be coming down with something, I called Sarah in sheer desperation. Of course, we'll pick him up, Sarah responded without a flicker of hesitation. Jim's already heading to the school. He adores their little chats on the drive home. Tommy's been regaling him with tales of their science project. I hung up the phone and simply sat at my desk, fighting back a fresh wave of tears. $1,000 a month bought me nothing but hollow excuses from my own mother, while my mother-in-law unhesitatingly rearranged her entire day to help, without ever asking for a single penny. December stole upon me that year, bringing with it the perennial tradition of Christmas at my parents' house. It was a hallowed ritual, the entire family gathering, exchanging gifts, sharing meals, forging memories. The call arrived precisely 1 week before Christmas. I was helping Tommy with his homework when Mom's number illuminated my phone. Dakota, honey, she began, her voice dripping with that cloyingly sweet tone that invariably heralded ill tidings. Regarding Christmas Eve, we've decided on something different this year. We're hosting an adults-only party. No children allowed. The pencil in my hand snapped. What? It's simply that we desire a more sophisticated affair this year. Mom continued, her casual dismissiveness suggesting she was debating dinner choices. You know, fine wine, mature conversation. But it's Christmas. I protested, moving away from Tommy so he wouldn't overhear. What am I supposed to do with Tommy? Oh, that's quite simple, she replied, her voice light and utterly dismissive. You can leave him with Sarah and Jim. They'd be thrilled to have him, I'm sure. You'll just come by around 7. After hanging up, I stared at Tommy, diligently tackling his math problems, utterly oblivious that his grandmother had just uninvited him from Christmas. My heart ached, watching him concentrate, his tongue sticking out in that familiar way Mark used to. I spent the next week agonizing over what to do. The mere thought of celebrating without Tommy felt profoundly, terribly wrong. Yet, entirely boycotting the family Christmas seemed too drastic, too confrontational. Finally, I devised a compromise. I'd leave Tommy with Sarah and Jim for a few hours, make a brief appearance at my parents' house for gifts and greetings, then return to celebrate properly with my in-laws and my son. On Christmas Eve, I arrived at my parents' house alone, a bag of carefully wrapped presents clutched in my hand. The driveway overflowed with cars, far more than typical for our gatherings. Approaching the front door, I could hear a cacophony of laughter and Christmas music spilling out into the crisp December air. I opened the door, and my world seemed to abruptly tilt sideways. The house pulsed with relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, but that wasn't what froze me in my tracks. There, darting through the living room, adorned with festive paper crowns, were Rachel's 3 children. Near the Christmas tree, I spotted my cousin Linda's children, eagerly helping themselves to cookies. Then, more children materialized. My cousin Mark's twins, my cousin Susan's teenager. The room suddenly felt stifling, claustrophobic. I stood rooted in the doorway, the gift bag hanging limply from my hand, as the sickening, undeniable reality of the situation crashed over me. This was no adults-only party. It was a celebration where only my son was deemed unwelcome. I stood paralyzed in the doorway, my mind frantically trying to make sense of the surreal scene. Aunt Marie, my mother's sister, was the first to spot me. Dakota, sweetheart. She rushed over, enveloping me in a hug, then scanned the room expectantly. Where's little Tommy? Don't tell me he's sick on Christmas Eve. Before I could articulate a response, my cousin Peter chimed in. Yeah, where's our favorite little scientist? Jake's been itching to show him his new chemistry set. More relatives converged, each echoing the same bewildering question. Where was Tommy? Why had I come alone? Each innocent inquiry felt like a searing knife twisting deeper into my gut. I couldn't form coherent words. Unable to explain a betrayal, I barely comprehended myself. Through the throng, I finally located my mother in the kitchen, meticulously arranging cookies on a festive platter, as if everything were perfectly normal. As if she hadn't just heartlessly excluded her own only grandson from a cherished family celebration. "Excuse me," I managed to utter, gently pushing past my concerned relatives. My feet propelled me towards the kitchen on autopilot, a cold fury steadily coiling within me with every step. "Mom," I said, my voice deliberately low and tightly controlled. "Can we speak privately?" Something in my tone made her immediately set down the platter. I led her into the secluded hallway, away from their curious gazes and eager ears. "You explicitly told me this was an adults-only party," I stated, fighting to keep my voice from trembling. "You specifically instructed me not to bring Tommy. So, why are Rachel's children here? Why are all the cousins' children here?" Mom straightened her festive Christmas sweater, her eyes deliberately avoiding mine. "Well, that's different." "Different how?" I pressed, my patience wearing thin. "Those children," she said, gesturing vaguely towards the lively living room, "know how to conduct themselves at formal gatherings. They're well-mannered. Tommy is, well, he's just too much sometimes." I stared at her in utter disbelief, a bitter laugh bubbling up inside me. "Well-mannered? Tommy is one of the most polite children I know. His teachers consistently commend his behavior. Sarah and Jim always say, 'Oh, Sarah and Jim.'" Mom interrupted, rolling her eyes with disdain. "They spoil him, encourage all those endless questions. The other children, they deserve to be here more. They know their place." As if on cue, a sudden commotion erupted from the dining room. Rachel's youngest son, Kevin, had grabbed a handful of deviled eggs and was gleefully pelting them at his sister. An egg, perfectly aimed, sailed across the room, splattering dramatically against Emily's new Christmas dress as she shrieked. I slowly turned back to my mother, one eyebrow deliberately raised. "Yes," I said, my voice laced with venomous sarcasm. "I can clearly see their superior manners on full display." Mom's face hardened, her facade cracking. "That's just children being children. But when Tommy asks questions about how things work, that's unacceptable behavior. Don't be so dramatic, Dakota. He's perfectly fine with Sarah and Jim." "I'm leaving," I announced, turning decisively towards the door. "I'm going back to my son." Mom shrugged, indifferently examining her manicure. "Fine, leave if you insist on making a scene, but do put your gifts under the tree first. We're opening them after dinner." Something profound snapped inside me. Standing there, watching my mother's dismissive shrug before I could second-guess the impulse, I strode directly into the center of the living room. I cleared my throat loudly, the sharp sound slicing through the festive music and buoyant chatter. Head swiveled. Conversations died mid-sentence. Suddenly, every single eye in the room was fixed on me. "Several of you have inquired why I arrived alone tonight." I began, my voice, to my own surprise, remarkably steady and strong. "Why Tommy isn't here, celebrating Christmas with his family." Rachel started to move towards me, but I raised a hand, stopping her cold. "Let me finish. I am here alone," I continued, "because a week ago, Mom called and informed me this was an adults-only party. I was specifically instructed not to bring Tommy." "What?" Aunt Marie's voice, sharp with disbelief, cut through the stunned silence. "But all the children are here. We knew nothing about a ban on children." Uncle Steve added, looking utterly bewildered. Mom stepped forward, her face flushed with rising panic. "Dakota, this isn't the time." "Oh, I believe this is precisely the time," I retorted, my voice gaining volume, a tremor of pure indignation running through it. "Because, you see, there wasn't truly a ban on children. There was a ban on one child. My child. My son, who, apparently, isn't good enough for this family's Christmas celebration." The room erupted in a cacophony of murmurs. I saw shocked faces, looks of profound disapproval aimed squarely at my parents, and confused children observing the unfolding adult drama. But that's not even the best part. I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. While my son isn't deemed good enough to attend Christmas, I'm apparently good enough to send my parents $1,000 every single month. And Rachel here, she supposedly sends $500. Rachel's husband, Jack's head, snapped up, a flash of realization in his eyes. Wait, what? What $500? The color drained from Rachel's face as Jack turned to her, his voice low and dangerous. You're sending your parents money every month? From where? Our account barely covers the bills as it is. Rachel's composure utterly shattered. Her face flushed a deep crimson as her panicked gaze darted between our parents and her furious husband. I never actually sent any money, she stammered, the words tumbling out. Mom and Dad asked me to say I was sending $500 so Dakota would agree to help them financially. They said if she thought I was contributing too. The silence that descended was absolutely deafening, weighted with unspoken accusations. I watched, mesmerized, as comprehension slowly dawned on my relatives' faces, each piece clicking into place. They were grasping the full extent of the manipulation, how my parents and sister had conspired to extract money from me, all while simultaneously excluding my grieving child from their lives. Are you telling me, Aunt Caroline's voice rang out, sharp and clear, that you scammed your own daughter out of thousands of dollars? You're nothing but scammers, using your own daughter like an ATM, all while treating her kid like dirt. That's low, even for you two. The room exploded again in overlapping voices, some expressing utter disgust, others vehemently demanding explanations. Rachel desperately tried to justify herself to an increasingly enraged Jack, while my parents stood frozen, their carefully constructed facade crumbling to dust around them. I raised my hand, a simple gesture that, surprisingly, brought an immediate hush to the escalating arguments. I have something else to say. The room fell quiet once more, all eyes returning to me. Mom and Dad stood like statues by the Christmas tree, their faces ashen, utterly defeated. Rachel was still trying to explain herself to Jack, but even they paused to listen. From this moment on, I declared, my voice unwavering, resonating with a newfound clarity, I will no longer be sending you any money, and I will not be maintaining any relationship with either of you or with Rachel. I'm done. Without waiting for a single response, I turned and walked out, leaving the bag of gifts abandoned by the door. The definitive click of the door, closing behind me, felt utterly final, like the overdue ending of a painful chapter that should have concluded long ago. Settling into my car, I immediately pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. With a few decisive taps, I canceled the monthly transfer to my mother's account. The action felt profoundly liberating, like severing a heavy, dragging chain that had shackled me for months. The drive to Sarah and Jim's house felt both interminably long and impossibly swift. As I pulled into their welcoming driveway, I could see Tommy through the window, joyfully helping Sarah decorate Christmas cookies. The sight of him, so happy and so loved, brought a fresh, gentle wave of tears to my eyes. We spent the remainder of Christmas Eve nestled with Sarah and Jim, frosting cookies, singing carols, and watching Tommy's eyes sparkle with delight as he helped Jim arrange the nativity scene. This, I realized with a profound sense of peace, this was what true family should feel like. The next morning, as Tommy still slumbered amidst the gifts Santa had bestowed, my phone rang. It was Aunt Caroline. You might want to hear how things unfolded last night, she began without preamble. After you departed, it was as if a dam finally broke. She recounted how Uncle Mike had stood up, declaring he couldn't remain in that house another minute, quickly followed by Aunt Marie and Uncle Steve. Soon, everyone was gathering their coats and children, making a swift, silent exodus. She described how the relatives had left en masse, not even bothering with farewells to my parents, some making pointedly loud comments about manipulative behavior and family shame as they walked out. And Jack? I asked quietly, my voice barely a whisper. Oh, honey, He was absolutely livid. He packed up the kids right then and there, telling Rachel he needed time to seriously reconsider their marriage. Said he was taking the children to his parents' house for Christmas. Rachel was in hysterics. Your parents desperately tried to salvage the situation, but it was far too late. I could hear her take a deep, weary breath. I want you to know, Dakota, we are all firmly on your side. What they did to you and Tommy, it's truly unforgivable. After hanging up, I sat on my bed, meticulously processing every detail. My phone immediately began to buzz with a flurry of notifications. Text messages from Mom, Dad, and Rachel. They were all variations of the same desperate plea. We're so sorry. We were wrong. Please talk to us. We can explain. I read each message once, then archived them without a single response. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a serene blur. Tommy and I cherished quiet evenings with Sarah and Jim, playing board games, watching holiday movies, and simply reveling in the uncomplicated pleasure of being with people who genuinely adored us both. Then, on New Year's Eve morning, the doorbell chimed. Through the peephole, I saw Mom and Dad standing on my porch, clutching a large, elaborately wrapped package. My heart hammered against my ribs as I wrestled with the decision of whether to open the door. Dakota, we know you're home. Mom's voice, muffled and tinged with desperation, called out. Please, we just want to talk. After a moment's agonizing hesitation, I opened the door, but remained resolutely planted in the doorway, a physical barrier to their entry. They looked smaller somehow, less imposing, a week of consequence having visibly diminished them. We brought this for Tommy, Dad said, holding out the package. Through the thin wrapping paper, I could discern the unmistakable logo of an expensive electronics store. He doesn't need it, I replied, making no move to accept the extravagant offering. Please, Dakota. Mom stepped forward, her voice cracking. We truly know we were wrong. The way we treated Tommy, the manipulation with the money. We are genuinely sorry. And we want you to know, Dad added quickly, almost tripping over his words, that this isn't about the money you were sending us. We really do feel terrible about everything. I scrutinized their faces, searching for even a glimmer of authentic remorse. Are you sorry because you finally comprehended the cruelty of your actions? I asked, my voice flat. Or are you merely sorry because the entire family now knows what you did, and they refuse to speak to you anymore? They exchanged a fleeting, guilty glance, and in that brief, telling moment, I found my undeniable answer. I think you should leave, I said quietly, firmly. I don't believe you, and I don't trust you. Not anymore. But we're family, Mom protested, tears finally welling in her eyes. No, I shook my head, my conviction absolute. Family doesn't manipulate each other. Family doesn't exclude a child from Christmas. Family doesn't scheme and lie to extract money. What you did, that's not family at all. They eventually departed, still clutching the unwanted gift, their hollow apologies echoing faintly behind them as they retreated to their car. I watched them drive away, feeling not a pang of sadness, but a profound, unadulterated sense of liberation. In the months that followed, I remained steadfast in my decision. I never answered their calls, nor did I respond to their relentless texts. Rachel also attempted to reach out, but her number quickly joined my blocked list. The money I had once dutifully sent to my parents now flowed directly into Tommy's burgeoning college fund. The curious truth about excising toxic individuals from your life is the sheer amount of space it creates for genuinely nourishing relationships to blossom. Aunt Caroline began inviting us for Sunday dinners, a weekly ritual of warmth and acceptance. Uncle Mike and his wife hosted barbecues where Tommy could freely engage with his cousins. Everyone made a conscious effort to include him, to ask about his burgeoning interests, to encourage his boundless questions. Mom, why does Uncle Mike's pool have that funny smell? Tommy inquired one scorching summer afternoon. That's the chlorine, buddy. Uncle Mike answered before I even could, launching into a fascinating, impromptu explanation about water treatment and chemical reactions that utterly captivated Tommy. I watched my son flourish under the devoted attention and love of family members who truly desired to know him, not change him. He began exclusively calling Sarah and Jim Grandma and Grandpa now, and they remained our steadfast rocks, our unwavering safe harbor through every storm. I had learned, finally, that sometimes the hardest goodbyes illuminate the path to the truest hellos.